Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock and practicing necromancer. Today, I've been doing a lot of meditation, a lot of reflection of self. A lot of times you hear religionists, spiritualists, and conformists talk about pride, ego, and self worth. But what does that actually mean from a practitioner's perspective? Well, think about it like this: you are the only one who knows your true self worth. And if you don't, I would recommend looking into yourself. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? And how do you want to be seen by others? Stephen Delmo, welcome to the channel. Well, while I was meditating, I was reflecting over the last 15 years or so of my own life. And I think this will help some of you and kind of feel like it's going to benefit some of you as well. Matthew Smith, welcome. So, anyways, as I was saying, I've noticed over the last couple of weeks since this new general manager, stepped in, he's been cutting the part timers by an hour or so, and then giving his full timers extra hours, which is basically illegal in itself because it's called equality, and it is in the labor laws. So, but watching how he discerns who to single out and who not to. Like if you got three people on the phone and you're not supposed to have phones on the floor except for whoever's running the day, well, guess what? He's choosing not to pay attention to a certain group of people, but yet will come down on whoever speaks up that is acting shift lead or is a shift leader, AGM or whatever. So I've noticed that the company that I work for has been doing a lot of shady shit lately. And I mean shady. From health code violations to OSHA violations and all that stuff, food safety, stuff like that. But more so, it seems like they're singling people out, trying to get people to leave. Like they don't want employees that have been there for a while. So I started thinking about this and watching this. I've even spoken up on this myself personally. Now, what's interesting is when your coworkers look at you and say, "Well, if you go, then I'm going." But at the same time, if you go, they're going to have to hire like five extra people. Okay, and it's interesting because right there you realize your self worth. Number one, you know what you're capable of doing. You know your job. You know your career, just like you know your path within, say, Satanism, Voodoo, Palo Mayumbi, Santeria, even Wicca or pagan, if you want to get into the more white light aspects. And it's interesting because you see this in other organizations as well. For an example, there's no equality within paganism anymore. You go into groups like the PPA, the Pagan Pride Association, or the Temple of the Feminine Divine in my area. You don't see any males sitting on the council or being in the priesthood. You just don't. It's all females. It's all women. You go into politics or say within a temple or a church setting, and you clearly see the separation between the congregation, the flock, and that of the minister or the elder, the acting priest, priestess, or whatever. And you just see this type of stuff, this segregation and this subdivisions all over the place, and it's like nobody wants to come forth as a well-oiled machine. you know. So, but I also see a lot of people go from location to location. And it's funny because they don't give themselves enough time to become acquainted with anything. You know, they don't learn about their legal rights. They don't learn about their employee rights. They don't learn about the traditions and the creeds that are in any spiritual matter, you know, be it a coven, a church, a temple, whatever. Same exact things. They just don't take that time. So they, because they go do a ritual, they do 2 rituals, 3 rituals, and it's like, yeah, it's not working out. Time to go on to something else, and something else, and something else, and something else. And we see this more and more in today's society. And your path is your own, Matthew. Um, and I'll get into that because that's one of the topics that I'm getting into on this video. And I'll get there in just a moment. So, anyways, when you deal with self-worth, you tend to look outwardly. A lot of people, when they get into financial distress, they don't take the time to understand why they're in that predicament. Okay. My son's mother, for an example, when we're dealing with, say, for an example, the art of seduction, or say, for an example, relationship status, you know, don't she, you know, they don't sit there and go, why is all these guys just up and leaving? What is it about me? Why doesn't, you know, somebody want to be with me? You know, why, why? It's across the fucking board. Well, here it is. Like I said, you have to understand yourself. I've always told my students and my apprentices this: look within first. Okay? What this means is you have to discern who you are and what you're about. Okay? What resonates with you as an individual. So when you look at, say, for an example, let's go with relationship statuses, let's say friendships, or hanging around past lovers, or, you know, let's go for an example, looking for a future, you know, mate, whatever. We know that women are the natural seductees. Okay. Or I should say the national seducers, is what I should say right there. The national seducers, the natural seducers. There we go. That's a tongue twister. So, um, whereas men, we as men have to work for it. We have to we have to learn certain phrases. We have to learn how to manipulate. We have to learn how to use certain smells like colognes, and utilize words. We have to act a certain way, you know, because that's the way society has prescribed the remedy. Okay. But when it comes down to it, does nature need all these perfumes, all these colognes? Does nature need all these mind games that women and men play? No, they don't. So you're the only one who can say, I'm getting the fuck off this bandwagon and I'm going to do me. Okay. And I was thinking about this earlier because I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were sitting there talking about self-worth, how to get to where we're going. And I started thinking about Robert Greene, you know, the 33 strategies of warfare. And as I said earlier, you know, you have to get into yourself first. That means look in here, look in here. Okay. And I'm going to read part one. It's called self-directed warfare. War of or any kind of conflict is waged and won through strategy. Your mind is the starting point of all war and all strategy. A mind that is easily overwhelmed by emotion, that is rooted in the past instead of the present, that cannot see the world with clarity and urgency, will create strategies that will always miss the mark. Okay? To become a true strategist, you must take three steps. Three steps. First, become aware of the weakness and illness that can take hold of the mind. What did I say earlier? Right here. Okay? Warping its strategic powers. Second, declare a kind of war on yourself to make yourself move forward. And third, wage ruthless and continual battle on the enemy or enemies within you by applying certain strategies. Okay? Now, in some cases, you have to look internally and say, I declare war on myself. Okay? I declare war outwardly on my enemies. Okay? Say, so if you got people stabbing you in the back, trying to keep you down illegally within the workplace, then you need to declare war on them. Root them out. Learn to identify them. And I've really found this very interesting because, like you, Matthew, I do like the 48 Laws of Power, but I also like the 99 Laws of Hannibal. Love that book. The various different degrees of warfare, and he actually was a strategist long before Sun Tzu. He was actually an African warlord that declared war on the Roman Empire. Very fascinating, by the way. So, anyways, so when you get into any religion, workplace, or whatever, you want to root out the issues that you have. What is keeping you down? What is the constriction of your, how should I say this, your unmotivated stereotype? Okay. What is it that is preventing you from succeeding? Okay. Is it fear? Is it your doubts? You know, what is it that prevents you from doing something? Okay. For an example, if you've had injuries to your body, you may be reflecting upon those injuries and how they occurred, how you sustained them. What is it about those injuries that are keeping you from maximizing your weightlifting or cardiovascular activities? You know, if you're at work and you've been targeted or singled out, you may feel like you're being bullied. You may be feeling like you're being targeted through strategic warfare. Well, to be fair, you are. Okay, on all of the above. Okay, not just dealing with the world, not just dealing with spirituality. When I was going to a former church years ago, when I was studying to become a minister, two things occurred to me while sitting in the congregation. I always sat up back because I hated being down front. When you're sitting down front, it feels like everybody's looking at you. You know what I'm saying? And when you're going to an apostolic church, it's like everybody's jumping, they're running around pews, and it's like, yeah, I'm not making a fool of myself. Like that. Watching grown men cry. Okay. And it's like, that's just not me. That's not my nature. Okay. I don't relate to that. So, anyways, when you're dealing with spirituality here and you're getting into, say, Satanism or demonolatry, you're getting into spiritual aspects of your craft that you've chosen. It is always good to get a firm foundation. Meditation is key, but to do meditation, you must also learn the postures, the correct posture. You want to strengthen your body, not just your mind. And if you're something's holding you back, like doubts, like religious trauma, if you will, and we've all heard the stories about religious trauma in today's cultism. And yes, I use the term cultism, not occult practices. Okay. Rose McGowan was a part of a Christian cult, for an example. You've heard stories of people being associated with Christianized religious cults where sexual abuse occurred, where inbreeding was taking place, and most importantly, where all this other stuff was going on. Not just armed guards and barbed wire fences and watchtowers and all that stuff, but you also see where mercenaries, mercs, set up encampments within the country and throughout the country, and they utilize it within a form of fifth freedom. Okay, they're using the laws against the government. Okay, and it's funny because when I was sitting there studying Robert Kiyosaki's work, I started learning about the taxes. The last couple of years, I've gotten no returns, none whatsoever. I think the most I got out of this past year was like $40. $40 out of about 5 grand. Okay, which is all right. I mean, I don't really give a shit, but I could have used that money for my car. You know, I had some work that needed to be done at that time, and that money would have been awesome for that. But I only got like, I think it was like $70 or something like that. It was like $75, and they take half of that out for the taxes, which leaves you with like $40, half of that. So it was like, what's the point of filing? But when I started learning about the taxes and I started understanding why the churches only got all these tax breaks and they got away with bloody murder, you start learning, oh, okay, this is how corporations get lower taxes, whereas the rest of us Joe Schmoes end up getting taxed higher. You end up about how to make money work for you and not the other way around. So you start looking at assets and how to turn and liabilities, how to turn liabilities into assets. You start learning about the tax brackets and how to operate those, how to utilize credit cards to gain the most proficient amount of benefits for yourself and your family. And then I look back and I'm looking at my ex and how she never has money, but yet here I am bringing in like $200-300 a month that's sitting in the backup. You know, I end up with like, I want to say like $900 every so often, and during that time, it's like she falls behind, so I'm basically running two households. I'm helping out with one household, and I'm doing my household. Okay, so practicing witchcraft or sorcery of any kind, if you're running a temple, a church, a coven, you got to utilize your assets. What is your greatest asset? What can you utilize in those assets to benefit not only the foundation of where you're practicing. Like, say for an example, the Pagan Pride Association in the Temple of Feminine Divine. They go to what is known as the Universal Church, or the UU Church, and they do all their rituals right there in the back room. And it's like, okay, how do you pay for this for two, maybe 3 hours out of it, twice, once a month or twice a month or whatever? But then you find out, oh, okay, they're utilizing the ministry on the side. They're doing statewide ministry. Okay. But they're also forging alliances with Christians and Christianized churches. So basically, what they're doing is called reversed Christianity. Okay. Just like back in the 15th century, where you see Remy's book, Demonolatry, a historical and account of witchcraft. And this is kind of funny because when you look at this, you see three different laws, three types of practitioners. You got those, the white lighters that only heal. You got those that will go to the church and ask for permission to utilize any form of sorcery. And then you have what is known as the black magi, the black, sorcerers and sorceresses that will just say, fuck you, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want, the rebels without a cause. So, and eventually when those rebels become a threat to society, then they get knocked down a peg. Most modern account of that would be E.A. Quetting and How to Become a Living God. Prime example right there. And then you look at the restrictions being put on, D.H. Thorne. You look at what happened to Bokor Leonard Elmera, where his account was literally deactivated and he had to start all over from scratch. The book selling for D.H. Thorne through Amazon, where they were constricting his income through his book selling. And then you got E.A. Quetting's issue with, for an example, that one little news outlet is all it took, saying, "Hey, look at this guy," and everybody fucking panics. It's like we learned nothing from the last 1100 years. The witch trials, the burning times, the crucifixions, all of that shit. The holy wars and the witch trials. All the way up until the satanic panic of the 1980s, early 90s. Humanity doesn't learn. You remain in stagnation. So, what do you do when you get into these practices? Well, first of all, as a practicing necromancer, and this is my path, I spent 35 years as a Satanist, a traditional Satanist. I mean, I've been a practicing theistic Satanist, traditional Satanist, spiritual Satanist, and yes, even a LaVeyan Satanist. And that's 35 years worth of practice and study. Made my fair share of enemies, but I've also made my fair share of allies, friends, people that I've related to and that I worked well with. And it's interesting because when I switched over and I started getting into necromantic practices roughly about 7 years ago, I started studying necromancy and really digging it. I liked it. And when I started delving into the new path that I'm on and aligning myself further and further with the foundation that I'm in, I started putting together a lifestyle. I started putting together and erecting a temple for that style. And most importantly, I started getting into the actual practices. Again, I started targeting myself. And one of the things that I did was every time I walked to, say, for example, a cemetery, I would pray to the spirits that I work with, my patrons and patronesses. And I would say, and those that I was communing with, such as the ancestors and the spirits of graveyards and stuff, saying, "Hey, I want you to hinder me. I want you to help me to get better. I want to earn my status. I want to earn this. So whatever you got to do outside, don't do anything that would kill me, just enough to prevent me from meeting with you, just preventing me from reaching my destination, but just keep it as a challenge." You know what I'm saying? So I started doing this. I started fasting. And the first time I fasted and really fasted, that took a toll on my body. And I mean, really took a toll on my body. So as time went on, about 3 years later, I made the decision to leave Satanism behind and go full time within necromancy. Now here's the kicker. Since I did this, I've ended up writing 7 essays. I've delved further and further into history, mythology, anthropology, earned a degree in a doctorate of divinity, earned my stature as an archbishop. Excuse me. My throat's a little dry. So And then on top of that, I started learning psychology. And I started learning how to manipulate my own body. I got to the point where it was like, I'm tired of not being able to work with my shoulder because of the pain. And it was suggested that I looked into the body, how it worked, what muscles were affected due to the injuries that I've had. And I kind of looked at it as a type of necrotic surgery, if you will. And yes, it's an actual medical practice. Okay. You can actually Google that. It's an actual medical practice, and it is something that is like a surgery, if you will, that will cut out the core issue, if you will, of anything going on. Well, in this case, you're looking at it from a spiritual and psychological perspective. So as I get the charts, front, back of the body, best way to describe that would be Roadhouse, when Patrick Swayze's character went into the hospital and met the doctor for the first time. He just hands her his portfolio and of all his injuries that he sustained. And I started documenting that and going, okay, so these muscles were affected. This cartilage was affected. This set of nerves was affected. So then I started looking into workouts. I started looking at what occurs, types of stretches I need to do, what kind of toning and strength training I had to do. Well, guess what? 17 months later, 17 months later, I ended up through this practice of dissecting everything about my practice, meditation, working my body, my mind. I've overcome those injuries. I have every so often I get a minor flare up in my knee. My shoulder gets a little tight every so often, but I've learned how to stretch that. 17 months ago, I couldn't even sit in the Fubuza position of meditation. I couldn't get into the half lotus. I couldn't get into the full lotus. Well, guess what? By dissecting these injuries, by dissecting the entire issues, I was able to identify the affected areas and how to reverse the necrosis. And it's incredible on how you do that. I'm not 100%, but I'm getting there. And that's the fun part. Leo Blanford, welcome, brother. So, necromancy is perhaps one of the greatest things that you can do. It's not only just one of the two oldest religions out there and practices. Outside of necromancy, shamanism is the second oldest to date that I've come across, and it goes all the way back to both of these practices go all the way back to the 6th century BC. Christianity is a child, basically. Like a teen. I wouldn't call it a teenager, more like a teeny bopper, if you will. I believe that's the term that people use these days. The Twixies, if you will, 10 to 15 years old, if you will. But in this case, you're looking at 2,500 years. Satanism has been around for about maybe 200 years, maybe 250 max, depending on where you look in the world. So those pagan and Wiccan traditions, they're very new. They're new age practices. So, I mean, Satanism is good. It helps you focus on yourself. It helps you to focus on your intents, your dreams, your way of life. And Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson from the COS, the Church of Satan, wrote a book back in, I want to say it was like 2011, somewhere between 2011 and 2016. I want to say it was 2016, but I may be wrong. It's called The Warlock. The book of what was it called? The Warlock's Book. Okay. And this was the masculine approach to warlockery, or what is called today warlockery, within certain white light traditions. Now, what's interesting here is this was to bring forth the warlock and put the warlock in the rightful place next to the witch, the satanic witch. And as I was talking with Leo here um, earlier today, if you look at the very definitions of what a male witch is or a male practitioner, you're looking at a wizard or you're looking at the warlock. Okay, depending on the realm of regions, such as when you look at today's warlock, you're looking at the liar, the oath breaker, the betrayer perspective of Wiccans and pagans when you get into the Welsh and Scottish traditions. Okay, they don't stop to think about other aspects of male practitioners, such as the hexa, which is Swedish, okay, Scandinavian. And what's interesting about this application is maybe 25% of the practitioners were male practitioners, warlocks. If you get into going further, such as the Middle East, you've got the mage or the mage, the magi. Um, you got which is a male practitioner bent on intellectual aspects, knowledge, collector of knowledge, protector of the magical systems, if you will. You go down into tribal or African Caribbean traditions, and you have the Bokor, which is the male aspect, the female being the Capilata, okay, much like the witch, the female application of this. So then you got the Brua and Brua of the practices such as Brujeria and Palo Mayambi, Palo Monte, Santeria aspects. Okay. And then you got, like I said, the witch and warlock of Satanism. Okay. There is a separation between male and female practitioners. And when you go into any given system, you want to learn to put forth a firm foundation. You want to study that tradition, have a firm grasp on those traditions. And a lot of times you have to sit there and meditate on the fact, is this a path for me? Is this something that I can relate to and get behind? Okay. I related to Satanism for so long that it became a part of my very being, my very nature. And somewhere along the lines, when I became a father and a mate, if you will, I kind of lost perspective of that. So when I got into necromancy about 7 years ago, it was something that really developed a persona. It really brought forth that thought form of who am I and what am I? What am I about and where do I want to be? How do I want to be viewed by the world? Okay. So I started delving into books like Deliberate Discomfort. Very, very good book. Robert Peterson's perspectives are very detailed. The 12 Rules of Life, very detailed. And I started getting into, most recently, I got a couple of books. The first one is The Way of the Superior Man. I got that off TikTok Shop. I had my doubts at first, but when I started reading it, I started thinking about it, and it was like, huh, this is a type of seduction, if you will, something that a warlock would do, putting forth the game, if you will, when dealing with women or the workplace. As Matthew so colorfully put out, the 48 laws of power could be put towards this. You know, and it's like, okay, now I'm seeing where this is all coming together. So the more you practice, the more you put into it. I'm studying finances as well right now, and the interesting part is Robert Kiyosaki's work, investing and getting into things like real estate, getting into things like gold or silver, Bitcoin, alternative finances, looking into how to get out of debt, how to use credit cards to your benefit, how to use the system for your benefit, either through travel, lodging, or cash back. And it's like, okay, all of this is coming together, you know, and I can see why the first rule of a Satanist is, because you're remembering the creed. The highest law of a Satanist is self-preservation. The second highest law of a Satanist is all gratification is good as long as it does not violate the first and highest law, which is self-preservation. So going around killing people is not self-preservation. That would be harming yourself. And a Satanist would not do that. Okay? Just like a necromancer is separating themselves from society to benefit themselves in their practices. You spend a lot of time in solitude. You spend a lot of time in reflection and meditation. You spend a lot of time walking in the natural currents, such as graveyards, down in the wooded areas, such as forests, going into abandoned buildings and setting up shop and going, I'm going to do a ritual here and work with and invoke a certain spirit to work with, to learn from, to go inside myself and go, okay, I've got to master my mind, I've got to master my speech, I've got to master my own body's impulses. I've got to figure out who I am and what I am to be able to move forward. And before you can master the world, you have to first master yourself. And a lot of today's newcomers don't realize that. They read a book and then refer to themselves as a master. They've opened up these groups. I can't tell you how many groups are in chaos where there's no knowledge being put forth. There's no enlightenment. It's just game playing and photos. It's that look at me, prideful, egotistical BS that's doing more damage than good. And then it's all about control. And when you call them out and you have the evidence, then it becomes a pissing contest. And you're the only one that can sit there and go, sorry, man, I'm not going to sit there and argue with you. I'm too good for that. I don't have to do that. I mean, even Robert Greene said in the 48 Laws of Power, and you can actually look through this, Matthew. I guarantee you'll find this one interesting. I love that chapter because I think about it all the time. Win by actions, not by arguing. Never outdo the master. Okay? And what's interesting is who's the master? You're the master of yourself. You cannot be a master of someone else. But if you learn to master yourself, you get to master your sight. You get to master what's around you. And instead of arguing with somebody, once you put your work forth, dedicate yourself through multiple different sources and references going show. All these traditions do this one practice. In fact, this particular practice, like divination, for an example, let's go with scrying, bowl scrying. What if I told you that went all the way back into ancient worlds? I'm talking first dynasty Egypt. I'm talking first, proto Roman times. I'm talking these old world stuff. And then you go, interesting. But yet you get all these people going, well, I'll show you how to do it the correct way. Really? Everybody from white forward has said that they have the right ability in tarot cards. Oh, we've mastered the true essence of it. Really? You know that it's called cartomancy for a reason. And yes, there's now even a Facebook group that's run by children, literally children, called cartomancy. Mastering cartomancy. It's like, seriously? Oh my fucking god. But anyways, no, you have to know yourself and you have to master yourself and everything about yourself before you can master the world, and that takes time. That takes years. Like I said, I've been a practicing necromancer now for 7 years. I wouldn't call myself a professional for for 4 years, but let's just call it the way it is. I became a full-time necromancer 4 years ago, and it has benefited me more than the 35 years that I spent as a Satanist. So, my advice to you: look into yourself. Who gives a shit about what other people are doing? My boss sat there the other day and he said, "Well, Evan, Eddington's doing this or this store's doing this. Who gives a shit what's doing that? What those stores are doing. We're trying to get this store to go in the right direction, financially speaking. You're just hindering things. That's all you're doing. You're playing fuck games." For an example, one of the biggest fuck games that Duncan's doing right now is this. It's about competitiveness. Who can sell the most? Who can put out the most product? Who can raise the most amount of capital? Well, think about this. If you got Sandwich Station against drinks against order taking, and order taking against cashiers, and you're so worried about fucking times, maybe you should stop with the competitiveness and start looking at the whole body as being one well-oiled machine. That's when while I'm on that one topic, look into Womack's work, Spirit, Body, and Mind. He's a Christian minister, and he actually wrote a book using biblical scriptures on how to separate the mind, body, and spirit as three different entities and working with them, combining them. I really enjoyed that book, and I actually learned quite a bit about how the body works, especially from a spiritualist perspective. I do practice multiple different religions, but here it is. I'm a necromancer first and foremost. As a multi-faith archbishop, I have to learn about these other religions. I have to keep up to date on this stuff. That's my personal responsibility, like following the creeds, the oaths. Your responsibilities as a disciple. Most people don't even do that these days. They speak about the satanic creeds and then they go right against them. It's like, okay, whatever. Wiccans do the same thing, pagans do the same thing, and for me, it's more like I'm just doing me. I don't care about the world. I just do me. Plain and simple. And I recommend that you do the same. To benefit yourself, you must know yourself. To benefit yourself, you must know what you're about. Don't let any hindrances stop you from being the best version of yourself. Think about it in this way, and I'm going to leave you with this. Okay? Be better than you were yesterday. Be better than you are today. Be better than you are tomorrow. Take your time, build a firm foundation. Knowledge is power. You want to evolve, you want to descend, you want to ascend into your magics and your spiritual life. Best way to do that is that firm foundation. All right? I want to thank Leo for jumping on here with me. I want to thank Stephen Delmo for jumping on here with me. Matthew Smith, thanks for jumping on here with me. And Matthew, if you want to learn about necromancy, I did put out a Journey into Necromancy years ago. I would recommend typing that in, and it'll come right up. I think I did like 5 or 6 sections to it. I broke it down through my journey when I first began necromancy. Okay. And Leo, I'd recommend that as well for you. Okay. All right. Have a good day. I've got to go take care of the dogs, go pick them up. I've got to go take care of my son. And until next time, I'll be around. You're welcome, Matthew. I hope this has been educational and enlightenment. And I always recommend two things: back up what you preach with multiple sources, and always make yourself available to the public. All right. Have a good day.